I'm channeling a message, and Spirit wanted me to talk about how we communicate with the divine, also our spirit guides and ancestors. And I have talked about on previous lives that I have done a lot of rituals at the ocean. And when I say rituals, I don't mean like any kind of spell work to harm other people. I mean rituals that are for my healing and for me to be able to step into my power and my gifts. The only kind of spell work that should be done is on yourself for your healing and for self love. And so, what I channeled was we communicate with our ancestors, spirit guides, and the divine through the ocean or water. And we equate water with emotions, and that is connected to the release of our emotions and the tears that mirror the ocean, which are salty. Um, I was hearing we bring the water from the ocean through us as tears. We all once existed in Atlantis, which is why our bodies are made up of similar composition to the salt water of the ocean. And so when I Googled it just now, it says the composition of the ocean and the human body share a surprising similarity in high sodium, low potassium ratio of their watery components, particularly in blood plasma. However, significant differences exist, especially in total salt concentration. So, while the human body is 60% water, the ocean is primarily water with dissolved salts. While the human body has a more complex composition of water, along with significant amounts of organic matter like carbon, hydrogen, and nitrogen. The similarities, like I said, are the high sodium, low potassium, and the water percentage. Both are composed of a large percentage of water. The human body is about 60% water. And then when I was looking up just the composition of the ocean, it's 96.5 water and 3.5% dissolved salts, which gives it its characteristic salinity. The primary ions in the dissolved salts are chloride and sodium, with similar amounts of sulfate, magnesium, calcium, and potassium. So that makes sense as to why we can benefit from those supplements. Seawater also contains dissolved gases like oxygen and carbon dioxide. And so that brings me back to what Spirit was talking about. We all were a part of Atlantis at one time. And so for anybody that doesn't know what Atlantis is, it was basically like everyone was an aquatic, I don't want to say animal, but we all were like living and breathing under the water. And so I'm gonna have to dive a little bit deeper into the idea of Atlantis and us being a part of the ocean and all of that a little bit further at a later time. But I often look at the earth that we walk on now as potentially the bottom of the ocean. Because if you think about it, if you think about a fish tank in comparison to the earth that we traverse today, like, fish tanks have they may have the little characteristics that look like mountains or whatever. And then they have like maybe the seaweed or something coming up from the rocks and things like that. And so I live in Arizona, and so Arizona has basically desert and mountains and cactus and all these different kinds of what is it? Nature. Like, I'm having trouble with my words today. I want to say foliage or something like that. But anyway, but they're different. So just like they're different parts of the ocean floor or just the ocean in general, they're different parts of the country. And so, in one part of the ocean floor, you'll find like the terrain for North Carolina. In one part of the ocean, you'll find it for Texas. In one part of the ocean, you'll find it for Phoenix, or Arizona. And so there's just different aspects of the earth. And so, but I say that because the first time that I visited Sedona, Arizona, which is very much connected to ancient Egypt, which is very much, I would use the term, I guess, anomaly maybe, because of like the otherworldly energies and the, I realized that I could read the land or like the history of the land when I went to Sedona, because I was like, I feel like I'm in a fish tank, like I'm underwater. And I was like, I feel like this place has been underwater before. And actually, I said, I feel like I'm at the bottom of the ocean. And when I looked it up, Sedona has been under the water like millions of times. It was like, we're talking about going back millions of years. You could Google it. It has been underwater many times, and that's what has built up the unique red rocks that are there. So I'm gonna dive into that a little bit further later, but I just wanted to point that out because we are very much so intricately connected to the planet and the cosmos. And that makes me feel like there's a connection between the blue of the ocean and the blue of the sky. And like at one time the sky met the ocean. So I mean, and then there's talk about outer space really being in the ocean. So it's a lot. You said, do I think it will happen again? I don't think with the composition of how human beings are now, the fact that we have to be able to breathe in this atmosphere versus underwater. So essentially, if you're asking, do I think that we're gonna be like overtaken by water and wiped out and then like go back to Atlantis? I don't think it's gonna be quite like that. But I do think that we are reawakening Atlantis. I definitely feel like that. How that's interpreted it can be interpreted in a lot of different ways. So reawakening Atlantis, I interpret it as the ancient beings who were originally in Atlantis have reincarnated and are here to basically bring the planet back to what the original plan for the earth was, which is people ruling with humanity. When people, I mean, at different times, money became a factor, gold and things like that were factors, commodities were factors, but it was not intended to be a situation where people were just destitute and other people were thriving, and you know there was such a drastic difference. And so I feel like that's what these ancient divine beings who have reincarnated are here for, and only they can accomplish that, because essentially the divine has tried to allow, for lack of better terms, regular human beings to try to get it right. And so I've been talking about that we are in the book of Revelation. Even though we all know that there's issues with the Bible, a lot of the most important information was left out on purpose. But those documents do still exist, because I did get a download that the Roman Catholic Church still has the original documents that they use to their advantage, of course. And so I definitely feel like that this earth is going to look and operate very differently. And this is just the beginning. So this is like year 9, which is completion. And going forward, things are going to look very different, in a good way, for the benefit of humanity. The divine, what I'm hearing is that the divine has no objective to like wipe the planet out because of a small percentage of elites who have dominated the planet and created this whole economic system and things like that. And so the objective is not to punish people who are just trying to make it. And so all the theories of gloom and doom is, I don't feel like that's gonna be the case. I saw you, twin. Are you still here? But I know for sure I would not have come and incarnated here just for spirit to come and wipe out the damn planet. I know that's for sure. Because I just would have stayed in the divine. I just would have stayed in the divine and watched it blow. You hear me? So higher self, okay. Higher self, spirit, what does the collective need to know? Do you think we chose our lives or are forced here? Up until this point, you definitely chose your life, I believe. because that's what I've been talking about also, as far as like soul contracts. And because we're at the point of judgment, where like the rapture, so I explained the rapture in the sense that people will still be on the planet, but it's like a flipping has happened where the people that had all of the control, all of the control of the money, all the control of the information, they are going to then be relegated now to incarnating as a lower vibrational being. So essentially, they're going to be stuck in the lower realm, like a lower vibration, like homelessness, incarceration, like whatever you could think of as far as like the lowest levels of vibration. Not that those people are any less than anyone else, but they're operating in the lower levels of consciousness. And so, because these people have intentionally created an environment where the majority of humanity is forced, in essence, to experience lower levels of consciousness because of the disparities in economics and all of those things, they are going to then have to experience that life. And the information that I interpreted was that at this point is going to be permanent, where they will be forced to have to incarnate here and forced to be essentially eternally living in this lower level of consciousness. And so that's like the metaphor of the rapture, where the beings who have not contributed to that trajectory will then be, their consciousness will be elevated. And so that's why there's a lot of talk about beings here to help elevate the consciousness of the planet, because the people that are intended to elevate their consciousness, they're going to catch the vibe, and the other people just are not, because they're just so entrenched in their humanness. You said, so in a way, they'll be in like a spiritual hell. Yes. Yes. And it's not funny. But yeah. Bingo. So, and I say this because I had an energetic reading with a scryer who basically takes my energy that projects on paper and traces it. And there was a lot of ancient Egyptian symbolism, but one of the most significant things was they showed, and you can go watch it on my YouTube channel. The videos are on my YouTube, but there was a church, and then there was a cow that was basically morphed into a bull. And so we're talking about, when I say things are going to look way different, I'm talking about spirituality is going to be totally different. How, like, the information that people are going to be given is going to be totally different. Because, like, I was talking about how the original beings that had intended certain things for the planet, they left us an inheritance. And when I say inheritance, it's not just financial, It's mainly a historical blueprint, essentially. um Basically a guidebook on how to be a human, but how to live a spiritual existence. So how to be able to tap in to the highest levels of consciousness, how to be able to utilize your spiritual gifts, how to become a magician, how to be an alchemist. And so that information, which is our inheritance, was intentionally suppressed. Because if you think about it, if people really truly connected to their higher self and their spirit team and the divine and their gifts and all of those things, it would create an environment where everyone would be able to create. Everyone would be able to create. And that's why the Pentacles is about money, but it's also about creativity, because the money comes from your creativity, or your abundance comes from your creativity. So if there was never the concept of money created, and the concept of like a certain amount of people being able to control what we pay for and all of those things, those are all mechanisms that were put in place by people's free will in order to dominate and control humanity and keep them away from their true inheritance. And the song said everything's here for you. Like, it was, that's why we can live off of the land. That's why everything that we need to eat can be grown from the land for free, essentially. But because we have to pay for, and so like if you had a farm, you would have manure from the cows. I don't think humans are supposed to drink milk. I mean, I love cheese and I eat the hell out of some cheese, so ain't no judgment here. I'm not shading anybody. But just because of the difference, like human milk versus cow milk, and like we wouldn't drink the milk that dogs drink from their mothers and stuff like that. So I just, for that one thing in particular, I think that maybe there's something more to that. I would have to dive further into that. But, essentially, we could have eggs to eat with chickens. We could have, all the fruits and vegetables that we need from the land. And so and then also too, if you look at the history of cathedrals and how they were built and how they basically generated their own electricity and things like that. So everything was designed specifically so that people wouldn't be in this predicament where they could not tap into their supernatural gifts because they're struggling to make ends meet so that they have a roof over their head and food to eat and things like that. There would be, if we had a society where people were truly tapped into their gifts, we would have very little sickness and disease. We would have very little mental health problems. And so there's just a whole host of things that would be way different if we had really had access to our true inheritance, which is the information from all of the mystery schools and ancient Egypt, and just all that information. So the way people look at the Bible as like a, what they call it, something before you leave Earth. book of instructions or something like that before you leave Earth or whatever. Um, those other ancient texts were supposed to be our guidebook, but instead we have for lack of better terms, a watered down version of oppression is what I'm hearing. And so higher self spirit, what does the collective need to know? But thank you for your questions. I like talking about stuff like this. Ooh, excuse me. Thank you for the likes and the follows. So, what does the collective need to know for their highest and best good? I'm trying to figure out why I'm so hot. Thank you for the gifts. And so the cards are basically showing exactly what I was just talking about. So we have the Knight of Wands in reverse. So, like, as I was talking about reckless behavior of the divine, reckless behavior of people who have basically controlled this planet has created an imbalance in humanity. And that imbalance is basically the disconnection of the masculine and feminine within. Because I talk about when it's in the upright, this is like a depiction of the masculine and feminine coming together in a divine union. And so it essentially has a double meaning of you have masculine and feminine within, which has to come together first in the divine union, and then you can then join your divine masculine or feminine, externally. And that is just a compliment. But when the masculine and feminine within is disconnected, it creates the disconnect from the divine. And so that's what I've been talking about also in other lives, is that like the metaphor of the dismemberment of Osiris and Isis having to put that masculine back together. and then creating a male child within her as like the miraculous birth. It's all it becomes a metaphor for like the death and the rebirth of the son. So like Horus has been compared to Christ, which is the Son of Man. And but what I was talking about is that, and this information is something that I downloaded after I talked about it the other day. But essentially, dismantling or dismembering the parts of the masculine. So Isis is, from the download that I got, is a part of the Trinity. So is El is source, is Isis, Ra is the sun god. So is Ra El. And then you have Isis, who has masculine and feminine energy, Ra, who has masculine and feminine energy. And so Osiris was like the, basically like this. When you have an imbalance of the masculine and feminine, the masculine was broken apart and scattered in different places. And so that's the metaphor for like disharmony, imbalance, conflict. And then so what Isis did was she healed the masculine within her, which essentially put the parts of Osiris within her back together. And then so Osiris, and then so we have the death and then the rebirth. So the death was Osiris being dismembered, and then Isis putting that masculine energy back together within her, creating the first form of source in a human vessel. And I talk about the difference between the human form and the human vessel. So Isis would have been considered human form because she was in a form, but she was still fully in spirit. But when you have spirit in a vessel, then you have Horus, aka Jesus, in the Bible, in the miraculous birth. And they called Jesus the Son of Man because the masculine energy died as Osiris, but then was resurrected as Ra, the Son of Man, or the Son. You know, it's a really deep concept. I'm trying to I'm trying to make it as plain as possible. I'm not gonna try to like insult anyone's intelligence, because I know the people that come across me are like very highly intelligent, very operating at very high levels of consciousness. But you know, in order for me to process the information and bring it out into like human words, that's what I mean, because we can communicate telepathically and it just makes sense. But if I'm trying to put it into human words, that makes it a little more challenging. But so then, like I was talking about, humanity is basically stuck in the middle. We have been blinded, we were kept away from our inheritance, and this has affected our mental state. I talked about you know, mental health and all those things that would essentially be non-existent if we had been given our inheritance. And then she's sitting in front of the ocean, and I was talking about how we are intricately connected with the ocean, and that's how we connect with ourselves, because We connect with our spirit guides and our ancestors through the ocean. Our spirit guides a are different aspects of ourselves from past lifetimes. So for every lifetime that your energy was housed in a vessel and you went through all the things that you went through, like all of the lessons and the tests and the tests and the lessons and all the wisdom gained, that is what makes up your spirit guide team. Um, is somebody spamming a question, child? Oh, yeah. If you have, you can donate to ask a question. Um, and then, so like I was saying, the world as we know it is going to look very different. The wheel is turning in our favor. I was talking about the cow going into the bull. And then, so that is creating an environment where we are releasing fears, coming out of the shadows. And spirit is like, it's all up from here. The family is going to be restored. You're going to have complete and utter happiness and wish fulfillment, contentment. No more struggling to make ends meet. No more relying on government funding. You know, I mean, the cards just basically came out and said what the hell I just said. Now, when you say Gaia, what do you mean? Do you mean just the universe? Um, so would you, as far as like Gaia being a living being, is that what you're asking? Shoot. So from a human perspective, I don't know much about Gaia. Um, so just from a quick Google search, it says the primordial Greek goddess of the earth. Now, I mean, the earth is definitely a self-regulating system because it's everything is intended to be in balance. Um, do I think we need to connect with the earth more? I definitely would say you need to connect with the earth more because, I talk about grounding and a lot. I find myself going through awakenings on a regular basis. And I can tell that I'm going through an awakening because my thought process changes. And when I say my thought process changes, it's more like I'm hyper aware of things. And so I find myself saying to my spirit guides, I feel like I'm going through an awakening. Can you help me ground? Because it's like my thoughts are like looking at people differently, looking at situations differently. It's basically, how I could explain it would be over analyzing everything at rapid speed. So your mind is just going and going and going, and as part of that is because you're downloading extreme amounts of information at one time. And so what what I was talking to my spirit guys recently, and I was saying the energy that I'm interpreting. So like when we talk about ops and things like that, when I'm experiencing an awakening, I feel like, so the energy that I'm reading and interpreting and downloading, I realize that it could be telepathic. So, whereas we look at, say, we look at someone as our op, that person may not even be consciously aware of what they're doing because they are communicating energetically and telepathically. Now, according to the divine, there is no difference. So that's why I try to warn people about being very careful about what you're thinking about, your emotions, and all of that. And so that's why, yes, connecting to the earth is extremely important for grounding. That's something that needs to be done on a daily basis, if not multiple times a day, because we're the with the planet, with the consciousness of the planet collectively rising now. It's like the planet is like a balloon, essentially. And just like a balloon can get carried away, like a helium balloon can get carried away, we can get carried away as well if we're not grounding. And I talk about how, when I was in California, in Los Angeles, I would ground with, there was a place in my complex where I could sit on a brick wall and put my bare feet into the grass. And periodically, I would sit there with my feet in the grass, and my left foot would start to feel a vibration, and it would come all the way up my left leg. And that vibration is basically me downloading information from the earth. Now, cognitively, consciously, I wasn't necessarily getting words. There were times when I would get like information and I would record voice notes about what I was getting. But sometimes I would just sit there and it would be the sensation, it would come up my leg and then it would just dissipate. And I wasn't sure of what kind of information I was getting. And then I noticed that after we had an earthquake in California, I was like, let me go test this theory. Because I was like, I wonder if I'm going to get an even more powerful sensation after this earthquake. And it happened. And so there's very, it's very important to connect with the earth and ground, because that's part of the whole mental health epidemic as well. Because my awakening, because I was reading so many different timelines of information and energy, it felt real in the present to me, but I was reading past life energy. I was reading future energy. I was reading all kinds of timelines of energy. But because our past lives are all connected to this lifetime, our past lives and our future lives, I'm hearing, are all connected to this particular lifetime, That's why you, like, when you get all this information at one time, you can plug it into this current lifetime. Because I had a past life reading one time, and the reader was describing me as a cave woman. But the way she was describing me as a cave woman, it completely mirrored my current lifetime. She was like, you seem to be really sad. You're just by yourself. The energy is that your family really didn't embrace you. They rejected you, and you just had to kind of make it on your own. And I was like, well, damn, that's the same shit I'm going through this lifetime. And I'm like, you mean to tell me that I've been incarnating with these motherfuckers since I was a damn cave woman and beyond, and they doing the same shit? So, yeah, I mean, energy is energy all day. And when we talk about incarnating with the same energies who are essentially doing the same thing to us that we've experienced in past lifetimes, and they still haven't gotten it right, that's when you get into the soul contracts and stuff. But that's why it's even more important to ground, because your interactions with the energies in this lifetime trigger memories from past lifetimes. So can you imagine, like, for instance, I'll use like my mommy issues from this lifetime. The stuff that she triggered in this lifetime, she was triggering all the other past lifetimes where she was on some bullshit in my life. So it's like our lives are echoes of each other. Um, you mean just your individual lifetime is an echo? Yeah. So essentially, the energies who have been consistently pure hearted and have come to incarnate to assist their bloodlines have been dragged every lifetime. They've been consistently pure hearted and consistently dragged each lifetime to try to be able to get the other energies in our bloodline to fulfill their soul contracts. So, like, for instance, someone in my family, their soul contract with me was to um, protect me, stand up for me, defend me. They had a couple of opportunities to fulfill that portion of their contract, and they didn't do it. But just wouldn't do it. And so I had, my portion of the contract was I had to have a hard conversation with this person. Like, are you going to defend me here? Do you see how this person that you're connected to is treating me? And they looked me right in the face and was like, I just don't think it's that big of a deal. And I was like, oh, okay. So I held up my end of the contract, because I could have easily just not said anything and held it all in and kept it pushing. But I actually stood up for myself and said something, because that's part of what I have had to do, is be able to stand up for myself. And that is where you find your power, is standing up for yourself. And like I was talking about, the hidden intelligence, the hidden information and inheritance. So the secrets are going to be revealed as well. Diamond, I got your payment. what kind of reading did you want? You do a general, okay. Are you okay with me calling you Diamond? Okay. Alright, so Spirit, what does... Alright, so Spirit, what does Diamond need to know for her highest and best good? So, what does Diamond need to know? Now I'm getting cool. I was hot a minute ago. Alright, so Spirit. Hold on, just I got to turn this Spirit out a little bit. So, Spirit, what does Diamond need to know for her highest and best good? Thank you, Archangel Michael, for protecting us during this reading. And I ask that if Diamond's spirit guides and ancestors would like to contribute to this reading, that they would do so. Okay, so what I'm getting is that so like the image or the tarot card that they were giving me for you is the Hierophant. And that I believe is because you've been affected by traditional religion is the information that I'm getting. So so they were saying they were giving me fear of the unknown. I was hearing grew up in an extreme Christian church. It was a like a cult. And I was hearing must unlearn to relearn. Um, then I was hearing told a lot of lies that created a lot of condemnation. I was also hearing that you have been a spiritual teacher who has been persecuted in past lives for speaking out against traditional religion. Does any of that resonate? I mean, other than the past life information, but like the traditional religion, you say yes. Okay. Um, so I was also hearing spell work by family who claim to be like exorcising demons out of you. Um, and then I heard this experience was intended to spark your memories of being a spiritual leader. So you say your family is very religious. Okay. So are you aware that they have ever done anything to you or tried to like perform some kind of spiritual ritual or accused you of being demonic or something like that? My mom told me she dedicated me back to God when I was younger. Okay, well that's essentially just like a christening. I wouldn't say that was, but so do you consider, oh, they prayed over me when I was younger, and when they found herbs in my room, my dad called me a demon. Oh my Lord. So essentially, you are going to have to, in order to heal, because like I'll say this, when I left the Christian church, it took me a while to get past the idea that I would be, um, damned to a lifetime of hell because I wasn't following Christ, and that, like, that idea. And so because you were a powerful spiritual leader in a past lifetime, but in a non-traditional sense, you had to experience very extremes of traditional religion in order to kind of spark your memories from past lives for when you were a spiritual leader in another, in the on the flip side. And so the you are going to have to work now to dispel the fear, the condemnation, all the lies that were instilled in you about traditional when it comes to traditional religion. And if you and now that's going to be your choice, of course, because your spirit team is not going to override your free will. Your spirit team is going to have to you're going to have to allow your spirit team to work with you in those areas to be able to heal, in order to get back to a place where you can truly remember who you are. And so that's probably why you're a part of this live where I was talking about going to the ocean, doing rituals of self healing, self love, revealing your purpose. So I studied African spirituality at one time, and the teacher was instructing us on how to venerate our ancestors, talk to our ancestors, do rituals. And so what I was basically doing was I was saying to them that I was ready to step into my purpose, and I was ready to embrace my calling from the divine, and that I'm ready to fulfill my soul contract. And so when you do that, you then, you got to be prepared. And that's why we were talking about grounding, because you will need to be very prepared for the things that come along with that. Because that's why people say you got to be careful what you ask for, because because you were a spiritual leader, like, that's different from a follower, clearly. And so that comes with a lot of power, it comes with a lot of responsibility, it comes with it also comes with great abundance, though. And so, like I was saying, the world as we know it is going to start looking very different. And so the divine needs spiritual leaders like you to be able to step up, to be basically to remember who you are, which is a part of remembering your past life, the wisdom from your past lives, and to be able to guide people in a way. Like I was saying, there's going to be a lot of people that are going to be moving away from the Christian church. And like I was talking about my energy reading, on paper it was showing a church, and then it was showing a cow morphing into a bull. So that basically traditional religion is going to be returning back to what it was supposed to be. And so like, and when I say what it was supposed to be, it just means it basically, because in that portion of my picture, it had me astral traveling above the church. And then it showed the cow moving into the bull. And so essentially, that's what you as a spiritual leader have been tasked to do is to help people calmly and successfully transition from traditional religion that limits your spiritual ability to basically setting people free and letting them know that astral traveling is not weird and it's not unusual and foreign. It's a regular part of being a spiritual being. It's a regular part of being source in a human vessel. You know, using your clairs is not demonic or weird. Using your reading energy, what I'm doing is not weird. Pulling cards is not weird because like anything can be corrupted. This type of spiritual practice can be corrupted because I talk about how readers will, like, they'll be charismatic and they can talk a lot, and energy is going to push the cards out, and they can, if you're quick thinking, you can interpret the cards and create an amazing story just from being quick thinking. But that's not the objective. The objective is to read the energy, because my higher self has been saying from day one, you do not need cards. So I just kind of use cards to validate what I'm saying for people, and I also kind of use cards like, if I don't really feel like I'm getting a flowing message that day, I may throw some cards out there to be able to read the energy in a more visual format. But essentially, that's people like you are going to be needed on a mass level, because they're going to be, I'm hearing, is going to be a mass exodus from traditional religion of all kinds. Congratulations. Do you have any questions? I feel like I just dumped a whole lot of stuff on you just then. So I hope you don't feel overwhelmed. Because it doesn't, like, the intent is not for you to be overwhelmed. The intent is not for you to like be this spiritual leader tomorrow. But just like I had to go through a process of having an awakening, realizing who I am, finding my power, and then getting comfortable with being seen. So that's why I get on live, is I have to be comfortable with being seen. I have to be comfortable with being able to articulate in front of people and not be, not have so much anxiety and stage fright and all those things. Not that I don't still deal with those things, but me forcing myself out of my comfort zone and forcing myself into the public eye is essentially helping me to get more comfortable. You said I've spent a year telling my parents that hoodoo and voodoo are other practices aren't evil. They're slowly becoming more open-minded about other things. Okay, that's good. But I will say this, I wouldn't spend a whole lot of time trying to convince them of what you're doing or get them on board, because your life is going to essentially speak for itself, is what I'm hearing. So, like, for me, I would love for my family to be completely super supportive of what I'm doing. But the energy is that they don't say much to me about it and to my face, but like behind my back, they're like maybe kind of weirded out a little bit or something. I'm not really sure. I don't care to read into that energy. And so essentially what spirit is telling you is that trying to convince your parents of something or anyone else is expending too much energy in the wrong place. It is time for you to become like extra selfish, self-centered. There's nothing wrong with that. As long as you're not hurting other people, like as long as you taking care of yourself is not like stepping on other people to take care of yourself, going within, going into hermit mode, focusing on yourself, doing the self-healing work, because your energy is going to have to be focused on unlearning the things from church. And I know that you're in the process, but because the first thing that came out was fear of unknown, there's still a lot of underlying fear that's attached to what you had been taught. And like having your father call you a demon because you had herbs, that's heavy. And a lot of times we don't think that that type of energy or words spoken over us has as much effect. But the fact that my spirit guides had me ring the bell to clear the energy, my spirit guides had me burn palo, and my spirit guides had me burn incense, that tells me that you have had a lot of spiritual work done on you. Because people, I was talking about this the other day, people really believe that they have to pray certain things off of people. They have to release demons from people, and that is demonic, because that's going against your free will. If you didn't ask to have some kind of demon removed from you, that is not their job, even though they're your parents and maybe they have good intentions and they were just as caught up as everybody else in the church. And then, like you said, a cult, like your spirit team said, a cult. They really are convinced that they're doing something good for your salvation, essentially. And so I'm not saying that you can't talk to them, but I'm telling you that even though, okay, so this is how the energy is reading. The energy is reading that they are purporting to be open-minded so that they can get you to talk more about what you're doing, so that they can then exercise it out of you. That's what I'm hearing. And so if you are talking to them on a regular basis about stuff like this, they are just receiving the information, because the energy is that, like, when you're talking to them, instead of them being like, oh no, this is demonic, because before, when they did that, it was like you retreated and shut down and wouldn't talk to them. So in their minds, they powwowed and was like, if we do that, we can't get her to talk about it and we can't then handle it. So when she talks to us about it, we can just, act like we're more open-minded so that we can basically know what we need to target with the spiritual work that we're about to do. And because it just feels like they are essentially trying to work on you on a regular basis. And that's a lot. So I don't know if you noticed, but after I started your reading, I said, thank you, Archangel Michael, for protecting us. That is something that you need to do on a regular basis. Thank you, Archangel Michael, for protecting me. Now, being that you're a very powerful spiritual leader, you really need to embrace that, embody that, um, ask your higher self for help with integrating with her, and also realize how protected you are. You are very heavily protected. So even though they've been doing work on you, you are very heavily protected, because I promise you, if you were not as protected as you are, and the way they're doing work on you, you would be a complete and utter Looney Tune. That I'm just saying, that's the way the energy reads. And so this is not an effort for you to like totally disconnect from your parents and look at them funny. The energy reads that they are well intended, but they're so brainwashed by this cult-ish behavior that they think that they are helping to save you from hell. And that is like their act of love on your behalf. But they are just as confused as everybody else that is following these practices. And so the divine is kind of the way they're having me translate it for you. They're kind of cutting them a break, which is interesting, because most times the divine will be like, oh, hell no, they need to be cut off, cut out, all that stuff. But I feel like they're trying to cut them a break. Now, this is for you, and this is for anybody listening. This type of information is not to be used to then be like, oh, I got to do a return to sender, I got to do a protection spell, no, that is not for you to handle. That's why I called on Archangel Michael. That is not for you to handle. And that's why I said expending your energy trying to convince them of something is misdirected energy. You have to focus your energy on your healing and your self-love. You said I can't really blame them. They grew up with the same teachers as church as me. That's what I'm saying. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. They're doing what they think is helping their child, who they love very much. You know, they're just very much so, like I said, deceived by the teachings. And so spirit is not saying this message is to have you love them any less. It's just you now have to create some boundaries. So I would definitely say discontinue talking to them about anything of a spiritual nature. I would definitely suggest that, like the holidays are coming up, when you're around them for the holidays, I hate talking about politics, but my family loves talking about it. So I just, I listen and I entertain it a little bit. But like, stick to very neutral topics. I know that, Christmas is all about Christianity, so you can't necessarily get around all of it. But definitely setting boundaries though. Spend it when you talk to them, no discussions about spirituality. Just focus on your healing, because when you have people that are trying to like exercise things out of you, that triggers past lifetimes where you were unalived because you went against traditional religion. There have been lifetimes when I've been unalived for that exact reason. And so I'll pull a couple cards for you. Whoo, child, that's heavy. That's some heavy energy. And, you know, like people really don't understand the magnitude of trying to go against someone's free will. Because like I've said before, I don't want everybody praying for me. I don't allow people to just pray for me because I'm not interested in having a bunch of damn people trying to pray my purpose off of me. Don't do that. Thank you, Lotus, for helping me to moderate. Higher Soul Spirit, is there anything else that Diamond needs to know? Yeah, because some of those prayers have malicious. Yeah. Ciao. I mean, like, I've heard some real horror stories about the how cultish these churches can be. The first creator that came to mind is this girl. I think her name is Isis, but it's spelled differently. It's spelled like, hey, cut it. It's spelled like EYEIS, something like that. But she's on here on TikTok, and she came from a very strict cultish type church, and she like basically does lives on esotericism. Y'all. She has esoteric content. So I would recommend looking into stuff like that. Excuse me. I don't agree with everything she talks about, but I do think that overall she's really like knowledgeable. You said Jasmine Gardens came from that type of background as well. Okay. And that's the one with the dreads, heavy set with the dreads. Trying to pray away autism. What the hell? Oh my Lord. People are a trip. Well, I went to a whole ass funeral. It was a Catholic funeral. This guy had gotten caught by his wife looking at Kitty PORN. And so he hung himself. Oh, can I say that? For entertainment purposes only. He unalived himself, and the pastor or the priest spent a long time in that service trying to pray him into heaven. And I was like, huh? Like, what we doing here? It was really bad because the man was a child psychologist on top of that. And he was looking at that stuff and it was bad. But for somebody to be trying to pray away autism is lunacy. Absolute lunacy. So, yeah, this basically is talking about what I was talking about. So, this is what I was talking about as far as not giving so much of your energy to your parents. Because, like the Queen of Cups, that's giving too much insecurity. Because they really they're not being emotionally supportive of you right now, even though it seems like it behind the scenes. They may, they're trying to be well intended, but they're by virtue of how they're interpreting the things that you are experiencing and not being supportive and trying to do stuff behind your back, that is not being supportive at all. And so spirit, like we talked about healing and forgiveness, and so spirit is kind of cutting them a break because of the fact that they grew up in the same type of environment. And so that's essentially all that they know. And so they're basically doing the work to try to create delays for you fulfilling your purpose. And that's what I was talking about. But Spirit said, no worries. You are the high priest. I mean, I said high priestess for a reason, but you are the empress. Very fruitful, very nurturing, mother energy. And so when you are a spiritual leader, I was waiting for the Hierophant to pop out, but when you're a spiritual leader, you're definitely an empress energy. And spirit is basically saying you have been through a lot in multiple lifetimes to be able to embody this energy. And justice is being brought back to the earth, and you are part of that team to balance things out and bring justice. And so, like I said, now is a time to make really good choices, because when you're going to have a lot of opportunities, but you have to choose wisely where you're focusing your energy and finding your strength, finding your power, building up your strength. And that's what I was talking about, going within, doing the healing work, setting your boundaries, and being courageous and brave and coming out of that fear that has been instilled in you. And at the bottom of the deck, we have nothing but happiness for you and your future. happiness and success. So yeah. Hey friend. I'm about to hop off of here. Thank you for trusting me with your energy. Thank you for trusting me with your reading. And I thank you for supporting my business. Oh, thank you. So I love your readings. Thank you. Yeah, my readings, my goal is to give hope to people. I do have to say some things at times that, I don't want to have to deliver. But, I look at it as, even if it's a hard message to swallow, it's a blessing from the divine for them to even be talking to you about things, because it's their way of showing love. It's their way of guiding you toward healing. It's their way of guiding you toward happiness. It's their way of guiding you toward your highest timeline. Because the divine is like a parent that wants their child to be as successful as possible. And so you got wise one. I told you you were a wise spiritual teacher, a spiritual leader. You got earth guardian. We were talking about Gaia and you connecting to the earth and grounding. And then you got water guardian, and we were talking about connecting to the water and connecting to your ancestors through the water. So you were very connected to the collective message as well as your own personal message. All right, y'all. Thank ya. I'm surprised you awake, Rising Roots. It's late over there. What you doing? Are you off tomorrow? You said, I'm glad you're getting off because I had a question and forgot it. Oh, well, you sure? I was actually going to ask you if you had a question, Lotus, honestly. Because I usually, since you helped me moderate, I usually ask my moderators if they have a question. You too. You said no, washing clothes all over the place. You said, is that man in Memphis? Higher self spirit, is Lotus's man in Memphis? Child, okay, so they're showing me a man waving like this. And then I heard the song, we're going to Kentucky, we're going to the fair. To see the señorita with flowers in her. And this is the card that came out. I would say that's a no. And and this is your spirit guys. Like, if you don't relax, relax. But I feel like he's gonna be real happy and funny and childlike, because his energy is like, you know how Forrest Gump was like it's not like goofy energy. It's like energy like y'all gonna have some fun. Y'all gonna have some laughs. Like both of y'all gonna make each other laugh. Yes. Jenny. Jenny. Now I'm hearing run, Forrest, run. Way I just say her name like that. Yeah, I feel like y'all are gonna have some fun together, for real. Okay, y'all. All right, y'all. Have a good night. I will see y'all tomorrow. Lotus, have a good day at work, honey. Thank you. All right, Bras and Roots, good night. See y'all tomorrow.